I do occasionally meet people that are like, oh, like I don't want to get a toy because I don't want to cheat on my partner. And a toy's not cheating, it's a way for you to experience pleasure and take off the pressure on your partner. It's a teammate.
Toys are totally your like companion. They are a teammate for sure.
Yes. So I would recommend like on those other 3 days, have some toy play. That way you are still getting your needs met. Your partner isn't feeling pressured to have sex with you 5 times a week when they really only want to do it 2 times a week. And then you still have that connection with your partner. So that way it helps to have both of your needs met.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to Vaginas, Vulvas, and Vibrators with Jordan Donnell. This is a safe place to learn about women's health and sexual wellness. I'm your host, Jordan Donnell, physician assistant, women's sexual health educator, and intimacy coach. All right, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so we are back with the Vaginas, Vulvas, and Vibrators podcast. Today I have Jennifer Summers joining me from the SIPS podcast, which stands for
Sex, Intimacy, and Pleasure.
Ooh, so juicy.
Yes.
And you are somebody where we've actually been following each other on Instagram for quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
We met through a mutual friend here in the DC area who had invited me to come speak and talk about sex, intimacy, periods, and business. And so I'm so excited to finally get to meet you and talk about the work that you do and talk more about pleasure. Currently, you are learning to do clinical sexology. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
So I want to start with that. And I want to know, like, what is the most interesting thing that you have learned so far in your clinical sexology program?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I think that the most interesting thing I've been learning is all of the different sexual concerns that people have, and then some really concise action steps that are going to help people overcome those issues so that they can have a more fulfilling romantic life with themselves or with a partner or partners.
Yeah, I think that there are so many concerns that we have, so many that come up. Mm-hmm. And that's why we do the work that we do, is because you can't walk down the street a lot of times and get these answers. And there's so much shame in our sexuality that we're constantly overcoming. What was like the number one or number two sexual concern that either you hear or that like you had the most curiosity about?
Sure. The top three would be low desire, low libido, mismatched desire, so like desire discrepancy, and then erectile issues. So like early ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. Those are the top ones that I hear from my clients and also that come up in my studies as well.
Okay. So with like, we'll start with the first one.
Okay.
With low desire. Let's talk about that. I think so often there's this push to have more desire. But is low desire actually a problem?
Oh, I guess it would depend on the person, right? Like if they think it's a problem, then it's a problem. If they don't think it's a problem and also their partner is okay and doesn't think it's a problem, I think the issue comes up though when there's like in relationships, for example, if one partner wants it and the other one doesn't, that can create other issues in the relationship outside of the sex realm. Most people, though, that are coming to sex coach is because it's a problem for them and they want to overcome that, But even with doing my parties, I'll meet women and they will sometimes be a little skeptical of me or shy. And it's because they have those issues and maybe like they want to uncover them, but they're just not sure how. Because like you said, like we don't talk about these things. These are not things that come up in your day-to-day conversations with people. It's more like I've learned you almost kind of have to like pull it out of people by giving them permission and understanding it's, typical for many people to struggle with low desire, low libido.
I love that you brought up permission because I think that 90% of the work that we do is like giving permission to explore, giving permission to acknowledge something. It's really about giving permission, because I think we spend a lot of time of our life looking for permission to do things. You know, as children, we're looking for permission to go to the playground. We're looking for acceptance too.
Yes.
And so permission is huge in the work that we do.
It really is. Yeah. And I feel like when I have clients that I'm talking with, just offering them that space to understand it's okay to explore. It's okay to, like, you didn't know what you know until you know it. Like, all of this is okay. And like, how can we move forward and remove these blockages and like, just, give you the life that you dream of?
Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to say something that's probably going to make you cringe.
Okay. Thanks for the...
We're going to go a little contradicting. So
Okay.
I feel like for a lot of us in the sex coaching space, there's this push that something, I don't want to say like something is wrong with you, because that's not what I mean. But it's like always a constant search for, why do you not have desire? And I think that we kind of forget about this other group of people who, a really great example is asexual, who we're constantly forcing people to, as coaches, be like, oh, well, let's explore why you don't have desire. And we're not necessarily offering the fact that like, maybe you are asexual and this isn't actually a problem, but you don't know or have the definition or know that that even exists, to explore that other avenue as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's a really great question. We had for school, I had a sexual attitude reassessment that I did. It was a long weekend. And one of our speakers was someone who identified themselves as asexual. And they discussed how, they really had to come to terms with the fact that sex for them was not something that they wanted to do, but they had a partner who was not asexual. And so really working together to come to terms with both of their desires. So the asexual person's desire to not have sex and their partner's desire to have sex. And, one of the ways they did that was they focused on non-sexual acts like cuddling, spending time together.
We're about to have a cat appearance.
Oh man, I'm glad he didn't step on the keyboard. So, I think that you bring up a really great point, Jordan, because not everybody is someone who wants to have sex all the time, or maybe even cares about that as part of their life. They may have other things that bring them joy and pleasure. So I do think it's important to recognize that there are all different types of people out there. And I think that desire and pleasure can be different things to different people. So, perhaps like somebody, way they get pleasure is from giving a foot massage or cuddling at night or reading a book to the other person and having that more intimate connection that's not necessarily about like sex and genitals.
Yeah. I love that. No, and I just bring that up because I know there's been a point in my coaching career before I really understood what asexual was, or that there is like, there are some people that don't want to have sex, and that is okay. And it doesn't mean that you have low desire and now we need to go find why you have low desire.
Sure.
And so I've experienced that in the work that I do. And I think that there's a lot more people that are learning about asexuality and learning about, maybe this is where I fit. So long story short, I just had to play a little devil's advocate there, because I think that in a lot of people in the work that we do push that narrative, right? So when it comes to low desire, what is like your favorite tip for helping people optimize their desire or improve that?
I would say self-pleasure, definitely. I think sometimes, there's a lot of reasons people have low desire, right? Like it could be medication, it could be anxiety, it could be stress from work, it could be issues with your partner. Like I mean, trauma, whatever. Like we could spend the whole podcast listing reasons. But I do think that getting back into your body and experiencing pleasure with yourself, and also when you're having pleasure alone, it takes off that pressure to perform for a partner.
Mhm.
It allows you to experience pleasure and maybe even learn what you like so you could communicate that to your partner. I think that would be definitely my biggest tip, some self-exploration and, maybe even like a mantra or two, like throwing in there about, I don't know what changed, but like I'm having more pleasure in my life now.
I love that. I think self-pleasure is such a great tool. And I've done, I do like women's groups and things where we talk more about sex. And the more that you think about sex, talk about sex, are involved in a sex space, to be honest, the more you want to have sex.
Mm-hmm.
And so even in like the work that I do, like I notice the more that I talk about it, the more I'm like, let's fuck. And so it's a really helpful way to potentially improve your desire. So I love that.
Yeah. Can't hurt to try.
Yeah. So I think that like low desire goes very hand in hand with mismatched desire.
Yes.
And, if you have mismatched desire, somebody has the lower desire.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are in a relationship where you're experiencing that and, ooh, I'm excited to take this somewhere totally different.
All right, let's go. I'm ready.
As a woman, if you're having low desire, how do you work with that with your partner?
Typically I've actually found it's usually in cis relationships, it's usually the man that has the lower
That's
desire.
where I really wanted to take this.
Yeah.
That was my next question because I recently went to Tonight's Conversation. Have you heard of their podcast?
No.
They had done a live recording in San Diego. I'm sorry. I will let you finish. I'm sorry.
No,
but they had done a live podcast recording and I got to write in a question and be one of the guests on their podcast. And, I had said that like I've been dying to do a podcast about this and I haven't done it yet. I had said, all men love a woman with a high sex drive until they have a woman with a high sex drive. How do you navigate that? And obviously, like I had my own answers, but I was kind of just asking a question to get the conversation going. And I think that is generally the case, is that for so many years, we have been like, oh, men are the one that have the high desire. Men want sex all the time. Men this, men that in heteronormative relationships. And the reality is, I think a lot of women actually have the higher sex drive. And we're starting to feel more confident and safe to say that. And so now we're realizing like, oh shit, it's really not a true statement. So yeah. How do you address that?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, having a conversation with your partner and determining like, okay, if I could wave a magic wand, how many times a week would you feel comfortable having sex? And so like, let's say the male bodied partner wants to have sex 2 times a week and the female bodied partner in this situation wants to have sex 5 times a week. So, to me, I would recommend to a client, okay, have those 2 times a week sex, like schedule it if you need to. But then those other 3 days, self pleasure, toy play, you could do mutual masturbation or even like have your partner involved by laying there and playing with your nipples or kissing you or like stroking your arm or whatever. If you want your partner to still be involved with that. I do occasionally meet people that are like, oh, like I don't want to get a toy because I don't want to cheat on my partner. And a toy's not cheating, it's a way for you to experience pleasure and take off the pressure on your partner. It's a teammate.
Toys are totally your like companion. They are a teammate for sure.
Yes. So I would recommend like on those other 3 days, have some toy play. That way you are still getting your needs met. Your partner isn't feeling pressured to have sex with you 5 times a week when they really only want to do it 2 times a week. And then you still have that connection with your partner. So that way it helps to have both of your needs met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's about this finding balance of how can we not push the boundaries
Sure.
of the person that has lower desire? And how can the other individual's needs also be met?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, finding the balance.
Yes.
And there's no right answer.
Correct. Yeah.
It's literally like trial and error.
Yeah.
To figure out like, what does this look like? How do we navigate this in a relationship? Because each relationship or each situation is going to be different. And it varies throughout the lifetime of the relationship as well.
So true. Yeah. I think these are conversations you want to keep coming back to because things can change. Maybe, one partner's desire increases or decreases. And I think it's important to continue having that conversation. Sometimes it can feel uncomfortable for people, but I've always felt like if you're going to be naked with someone and like have your body parts rubbing on each other and, liquids, you should, I don't like to use the word should, but like, I would hope that you would feel comfortable having a conversation to make sure your needs are met.
Yeah, absolutely. And those conversations are really difficult to have sometimes.
They can be. I think society, for especially women, teaches us that, sex is shameful and like it's for the man. And, like I feel it's so important for women to feel empowered in their body and know that it's totally okay to desire sex and to want more pleasure in your life.
Yeah. And I love that there's like women like us out here that are changing that narrative. We are quite literally like leading the pack on the new narrative for the next generations.
Yeah.
Ooh, that felt really deep.
I love it. Trailblazers.
Ooh.
Yes. I mean, unfortunately, with Dr. Ruth passing away last month, R.I.P. Dr. Ruth, like there's a space now for more people to come in and, continue educating people and normalizing the conversation.
Yeah. Such an important topic to have or conversation to have with everybody around you. Do you talk about sex with your girlfriends?
Oh, yeah. Part of the reason I got into this field anyway is I was always the person that was talking about sex or my friends would come to for sex advice. I love talking about sex. Like anytime I go out and do like hanging out with my girlfriends or, like women networking stuff, sex always comes up, especially when people learn what I do for a living that maybe they don't know me. It's always like, my friend this, or I have a question, or, what's the craziest thing that's ever happened to you? It just brings me joy. Like I get like excited, like let's talk about this.
This reminds me of a story, and this is great. So a few weeks ago, I was in the back of a van in Portugal on my way for an excursion. And it was a bunch of women, most of which were actually solo travelers, which was so fucking cool to be surrounded by a lot of other female solo travelers. And these two girlfriends that actually came together in the back were talking about this guy they wanted to hook up with the night before. And I was like, ooh, I think I need to be a part of this conversation. Like, what are we talking about back here? So the day goes on and eventually they learn what I do. Because I don't always just like walk around and tell everybody what I do. However, I am getting a shirt next week that says, I am a sex podcaster. Ask me anything.
I need that shirt.
And I'm so fucking pumped about it. But as soon as they learned what I do, they had questions, and they're like, oh, I've been following, who was it? Somebody that I've had on the podcast. And it's just so funny. Oh, Shameless Sex Podcast. They're like, yeah, I've been listening to them. And I'm like, I've been on theirs. They've been on mine. And they're like, oh shit, you are kind of famous. And I'm like, let's not go that far, but okay. And so anyways, it opened up the conversation though, to talk about sex, and people love to talk about it when they feel safe.
So true. So true. And like the energy of like that we give people to be able to open up, I think is so cool. I definitely get that vibe from you and also just following you as long as I have, but I've experienced that myself. Like women will tell me, Jennifer, I don't even tell my best friend about this. Like I haven't talked to my husband about this. And they'll open up to me because, we're professional and we're educated and we provide that soft landing for people to know that they're not going to feel judged or be judged by what they're asking or sharing.
I love that. I was actually recently talking to a girlfriend's boyfriend. She was gone and we were just talking, met for the first time, and just having a random conversation about life. And like 45 minutes into it, he's like, I don't talk this much to anybody. What are you doing? Like, how did you do this? And I'm like, I don't know. I just created a safe space for you to share and be heard. And not everybody can do that.
No, I think there's so many people out there who are listening to talk. And they're just waiting their turn to like say whatever they want to say. And I really think it's a skill that you can hone by giving people the space and actually truly listening to them, not just on like a level 1 listening where you're like thinking like, what am I going to say next? But that more like intuitive listening where you really have that connection with people. It's like an energetic bond that they're like, okay, like I can open up now and I can say what I need to say and I can like get that out of me and have some healing.
Well, you're dating.
Yeah.
I'm dating. Well, I'm not dating, but like I'm dating.
Yeah, I'm like, same.
Whatever dating is.
I'm going on the apps and I'm swiping left and right and hoping for the best.
I'm just hoping they show up at my doorstep is quite honestly my case. But I'm curious how that same component shows up in dating. Because I find that because of the emotional capacity or the safety that I can create, it leads to men attaching early. Do you experience that?
No. Not at all. My experience has been more of emotionally unavailable. I often don't tell guys what I do unless they're like really directly asking me, because I already get sexualized by men anyway when they don't know what I do. So when they find out I'm a sexologist, it's like, like, what are you going to do to me? So I don't
Nothing.
Yeah, it's like literally. So I'll tell them like I'm an event planner, and if a lot of guys are just like, oh, cool. And then never ask anything else. But there are some people who get curious, and I do appreciate when they get curious because then I'll open up a little bit more because, you're telling me you're actually interested. Like, what are you doing? But yeah, dating in general, it's been a lot of, I think, guys with mommy issues, emotionally unavailable, or like, I don't really know why they're on the date. Like one guy was on his phone the whole time and I'm like, what's the point?
When I was in Morocco, we actually made this observation. We went out to dinner and there was a guy and a girl sitting at a table. The entire time they were at dinner, they both were on their phone. There was no conversation had. Food came, still no conversation had. And I'm like, that is not the relationship that I want for me.
No.
Earlier today, somebody actually asked me, she said, what does it look like? So I had said that I wanted a partner to prioritize me. And she had asked me, like, what does that look like? And I'm like, presence and time.
Yes.
And if I am spending time with you and you are not present with me, fuck that.
Mm-hmm.
You're on your phone. You got to post on Instagram because Instagram algorithms or whatever. Fuck that. Then don't invite me over.
Yeah.
Till your algorithms are done.
Yeah, right. Call me after. Like, it's natural, right? Like, if you're hanging out with someone all day, like, okay, maybe you check your email or your phone, but I've learned about me, it's important to me that I feel heard. And if you're looking at your phone, I don't feel like you're listening to what I'm saying. And I almost like shut down. Like, I just, growing up, I wasn't listened to. And so I need to be listened to. And especially with a partner, when you're on your phone, you're not hearing what I'm saying. I don't believe in multitasking. I don't know anyone who can successfully do two things at the same time. And if you're Instagramming, you're not really actively listening to what I'm saying or tuned into me or my energy. So pass.
Hard pass. So I'm curious, when you're on your dating apps, what is an immediate swipe right? which is
right.
Swipe right is like a yes, right?
That's the yes.
Yeah. What's an immediate swipe right and what's an immediate swipe left? No.
So the swipe right, yes, immediate would be cat pictures. There have been guys that I'm like, I don't know about you, but your cat is so cute. Yeah, that's like a red flag that I need to work on. But love the kitty cats.
Pussies for days.
Yes. I really like when men talk about having gone to therapy or being emotionally available. I like knowing that people have done the work, right? Or are at least doing the work.
Or open to the work.
Yes, exactly. So, things like that those are big green flags for me. The list of the left is way longer. So, swiping left, definitely like any MAGA type stuff or misogyny or racism. I mean, those are pretty obvious. I don't really like dogs. I'm allergic to dogs. So if like their profile's a lot of dog pictures, I'm like, it's not going to work. Don't really want any dads if they have young kids. Like I'm into zaddies, but not like real life dads, I did date a guy with 3 kids and that was really rough. And that was, I never wanted to date a guy with kids. I gave it a chance for 3 years and I'm like, no, it's not for me. Like,
well, being a step parent is hard.
yeah.
I dated a guy for 4 years. I was in a relationship for like 4 years and with a stepmom to 2 kids, 2 different baby mamas. We won't even go down that rabbit hole, but here we are. And being a step parent is different than being a parent. And also, I think, highly more complicated because you got to be careful what you say or do. You got to be careful how you do it. And you can't punish. You can't really do anything. And it's a hard dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I've had conversations with friends and they're like, you're way too picky. Like, are you going to be alone forever? I'm like, I would rather be choosy than settle for some dude who doesn't match my energy. Like I'd rather, well, I need to enjoy the company of you more than my own solitude. And I haven't met anyone who I enjoy them more. Like most of the time I'm like, oh my God, like, can you put your dishes in the dishwasher? Like, basic stuff. Some of the other reasons I would swipe left would be like sexual stuff. So on these apps, when you like somebody, you can send them a message and then it'll pop up and I can choose to either like you back or not. And a lot of guys will just immediately come off and be like, I like your ass. Like, I want to grab your ass. Or one made me laugh recently. It was this long message. And essentially, the too long didn't read version was, I'm not looking for a girlfriend, but I want somebody who is going to spend all their time with me and only have sex with me and like do all the girlfriend things, but without the commitment. I'm like, what?
Who's doing that?
But no, we're not doing that.
Those days are, I don't want to say they're over because maybe not for everybody listening, but like the days of conforming, I guess, to like somebody else's needs, those are over. At least for me. Like, fuck that. I'm not just gonna, no.
Yeah.
No, sir.
Agreed. Now, the final thing that is a no is people that are polyamorous. Now, personally, I have no issue at all. I have many, many friends who are in polyamorous relationships. They're very happy. And I think that's amazing. I wish that I could do something like that, but I am like very jealous. So the thought of sharing my partner with someone else, I'm like, it will not work for me. And that's actually why I deleted OkCupid. I was on OkCupid for a long time. And like literally it is like the I'm married but in open marriage app. And I had to get off of there. It wasn't always like that.
It's interesting because earlier today I was also having a conversation about polyamory and how a lot of people actually really are just looking for non-committal sex.
Yes.
And I don't want to, like, the words that are coming up are like claim to be polyamorous. And there are lots of polyamorous people, but polyamorous is relationships with multiple people.
Exactly.
It is not non-consensual or consensual non-monogamy. Those are not the same thing. And there's a lot of misconfusion or misunderstanding, I think, out there. And a lot of people, I think, do sometimes use that or are maybe unsure or unclear of what they're actually meaning when they say that.
Yes, I agree with you. I actually have a friend who did go on a few dates with a guy who listed himself as polyamorous, married, my wife knows, like we're open. And then she found out the wife didn't know, like he just was
cheating.
Yeah, exactly.
That is cheating, sir. That is cheating.
So, and of course she was heartbroken and I felt bad for her. I would console her, all of that. But it was just another reminder of like, maybe that's not the right thing for me. Like, definitely. But I agree with you. Yes. Like polyamory is people who have multiple relationships. It's not just like I have a wife and I'm going to go fuck like 10 other people.
Yeah. That's called consensual non-monogamy. If your wife knows about it.
Yes.
If your primary partner doesn't know about it, that is called cheating.
Yes. Yes. Not a fan. No.
They are not the same thing. That is non-consensual non-monogamy.
Are you ready to start understanding yourself better, learning and recognizing your patterns, and really develop a relationship with yourself? If this sounds like you, the Unleashing My Power, a women's empowerment and gratitude journal is for you. This journal was specifically curated for women just like you to help you take back your power and develop and go to the next level in life. My friend Danielle and I created this journal because of our own experiences and what we were looking for in a daily practice to improve our connection to self and really become connected with ourselves. This is game changing, and the feedback that we are getting from other women who have started using this journal is absolutely amazing. You can find it on Amazon or you can go to jordandannelle.com/journal and it'll take you right there. I hope you enjoy. Be sure to go snag yours right away and leave me a review. Tell us what you think about it. Slide in the DMs. I know that your life will change when you start using this journal.
Now I know what to expect with cats.
Oh, I love it. I love it. We love kitties around here.
Yes, indeed.
So what else is coming up for you right now?
Well, I am doing this 51st date self-imposed challenge. So I'd love to share about that. So I tried to do it last year and I realized that I was still having some emotional blockages. So I got on 3 dates last year, gave the guys way too many chances, even though I knew right away, like, this isn't going to work. So I decided to start it up again this year because I'm feeling a lot more confident in myself. And, I've worked through some of those issues I had around dating. And I've been on 6 first dates and I talk about it on TikTok. But, what I'm learning so far is that, first of all, like always trust your gut. So it's like, I get a sense right away, like either like I'm really like interested in this person or I'm really not interested in this person. I think last year when I was doing it, if the guy said, "Do you want to go out again?" Even if I wasn't really like feeling it, I was like, sure, I've learned now, and some of my friends do not agree with me on this, but I've learned like one date, if I don't feel like I don't want this date to end, I really want to keep hanging out with you, then it's not the person for me. Some of my friends say, you have to give a chance for things to grow, get to know the person. And I don't disagree with that, but I'm very like energetic and intuitive. And if I don't feel that spark, like if I'm on a date and I want to go home and see my cats, I'm like, yeah, no, this is like, it's not really going anywhere.
Totally agree with that. If there is no connection when I meet you for the first time, it's a no. Like it's a no. It's not going to change. I recently learned a lesson. And this is actually a funny story that I haven't shared on my podcast, but by the time this episode drops, we'll have actually shared on somebody else's podcast.
Okay.
I had met this guy and he was really interested in me. He lived in LA. I lived in San Diego at the time. And he was like, oh, I'm going to come down to San Diego. Let's do something. He had mentioned that he really wanted to do like a baseball game. And I'm like, bet, let's go to a baseball game. So we figure out what day we're going to do it. And he's like, why don't you go ahead and get the tickets? And immediately I wrote yes in the text. But then I was like, weird. I don't know how I feel about that. Now, more to the story. He is somebody who is maybe famous would be a good word for it. Or like, he's yeah.
He has money. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically.
He can pay for the tickets?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so part of me was like, okay, well, maybe he's just testing me to see, like, am I just into him for his money or am I like willing to put out? So I was like, okay, whatever, sure, I'll get the tickets. Even though I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. The day that we happened to pick happened to be a sold out show on Mother's Day. Expensive tickets. Generally, they're never that expensive. So whatever. A couple days before, I'm like, what time are you coming? He's like, 11. I'm like, okay, cool. 10:30 on that day, I text him. I'm like, hey, what's your ETA? Oh, I haven't left LA yet. Game starts in 2.5 hours, sir. It is a 2-hour drive. So now I bought the tickets. You're late. You don't remember telling me what time you were coming. So he gets there and he's like, why don't we Uber to the game? Because originally I had wanted to walk. I was living downtown. And I was like, okay, bet, go ahead and get us an Uber. He's like, oh, will you do it? What? I looked at him.
Are you joking?
Girl, I looked at him and I think my whole face said it. And he was like, oh, well, I'll pay you cash. I'm like, why the fuck can't you get an Uber? So when my mom listens to this episode, she's going to be like, Jordan Donnell, what the fuck are you thinking? But anyway, so we get to the game. I refused to pay for anything at the game because I bought the tickets. He did pay me cash for the Uber, but I was like, bro, I bought the tickets. You can take care of me the rest of the day. And we had a beverage. We went and got tacos afterwards. Like, I thought maybe, like, initially before we even met up, I did not feel a vibe. I was like, I don't really know, but maybe the connection will be different. I was trying to be optimistic with a little more time together. It wasn't. Afterwards, he came over. We watched Baby Reindeer for 9 hours.
Oh my gosh. Love that
front
show.
to back. He fell asleep, which is fine. I don't really care. I wanted to watch the show. But I think that he thought he was paying in dick. And I refused to receive dick as payment. So 2 days later, this is where it gets real messy. He messages me and he's like, when are you coming to LA? I'm like, I'm not. And I was like, to be honest with you, like, just didn't really feel a connection. I'm really working on communicating rather than just ghosting, although I just ghosted somebody else, but whatever. Really trying to communicate and be like, I'm just not feeling a connection. Like, sorry about that. Like, I think as friends, great, cool. We can see each other, but anything more, no. Like, I got a lot going on. I'm traveling. So he's like, I wouldn't even be friends with somebody like you because you didn't pull out your wallet the rest of the day.
Oh my gosh.
You want to know where this gets messier?
Tell me.
I get to spend an entire week on the cruise with him next
Oh,
week because we have mutual friends.
well, cruise ships are big and you don't have to pay for anything on a cruise. So, yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
That is very
Like,
crazy.
It's rough out here.
I have shared on TikTok before my views about who pays for a date, and it's very divisive, right? So let me just state that I am a feminist. I'm all for equal rights with the sexes. But I also believe that if you ask me on a date, you should pay for the date. I know that's
100%.
old school, but I don't want to go on at least a first date, right? We're talking about first date here. I don't want to go on a first date and pay. I don't feel like I should have to pay. Some people are like, it's equal or you should split the check. And I'm like, I don't think so. So I've been on 6 first dates and 5 of them have paid. One of them didn't pay. And I was very irritated, Jordan, because we went to a bar. We order our drinks and the bartender asked me for my card to start a tab, which also was kind of the bartender's fault. as a former bartender, I would have asked the guy,
Yeah.
whatever. So I gave my card and like he didn't say anything or stop me. The whole date, he was like, "You're so pretty. Like, I'm really like having a great time." So it wasn't that, he met me and like wasn't into me. Like he was telling me he was into me, never tried to pay. When we went to cash out, he stood there while they ran my card for my stuff. And in my head, I'm like, there will be no second date now for that reason. And then he texted me after, or well, messaged me because I don't give up my phone number. But he was like, "I had such a great time. I would love to see you again." And I'm like, thank you, but not really feeling it. I wasn't going to say like you didn't pay for the date, but in the back of my head, that was 100% what I was thinking. Like, if you ask me on a first date and you don't pay, there will not be a second date. So,
And I
mic
think
drop.
that's totally reasonable. And I agree. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not looking for a man to take care of me
Yes, exactly.
at all. But at the same time, I am not caring for a man.
Mhm.
So, and for me, I have been taken advantage of many times. And so it is a huge trigger for me when all of a sudden they expect me to start paying for things or no,
Yep.
nope. I'm learning. We're still learning.
Me too.
It's a practice.
Yeah. My last relationship, when we first started dating, he was really good about paying for stuff and then lost his job. And then it was basically like 3 years of me paying for everything. Like if we wanted to go on a date, I had to pay. And then of course with COVID, his hours were cut at work. So like he couldn't pay the bills on time, the rent, like nothing. And it was all on me. And I just, I don't like carrying things from past relationships into new ones, but I also recognize like the reason I feel so strongly about guys paying, at least on a first date, is because of that experience where I was basically like taking care of him, and he had 3 kids. And so then the kids are coming and I'm like having to pay for their shit too. And I'm like, nothing came out of my vagina. I don't want to pay for all these people. Like,
And even if it did come out of your vagina.
yeah, right. So I'm with you. Pass on that guy. Especially if you're like a celebrity or whatever, like you don't have money to pay for a baseball ticket. Like,
I went and looked up his worth afterwards.
yeah.
Because I'm a crazy girl. And I don't think it's accurate, first of all. But second of all, I was like, bruh, our $200 for tickets you couldn't pay for.
Right. Come on, man. To me, it shows effort.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also I don't never say never, but like right now, I don't feel like I have to have sex with somebody because they paid for a date. And I know that some women feel like, okay, if I let them pay, I'm going to have to pay with my vagina. And I'm like, who the fuck says you have to do that? Like, you can tell me like, okay, if I pay, you're going to have sex with me. No, like,
it's interesting because I feel like when I am actually like dating, truly dating, I don't have sex. And that it's very easy for me to go on dates and really meet somebody and not have sex with them because sex with somebody that I'm truly trying to date feels a little bit more sacred than like somebody I'm just trying to fuck. And somebody I'm just trying to fuck, like, it is what it is. Because us women just want to fuck sometimes too.
Yeah, of course we do.
We don't need relationships for everything that we do sometimes. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about the spiritual sex. And right before you said sacred, in my head, it was going like spiritual sex, There's just something about that connection, like breathing together, staring into each other, gazing into each other's eyes. Like it creates a deeper connection. And I think the sex is better when you're having sex like that. I just don't see myself at least having sex with someone like that I just met or had like one date with. Like there has to be some building together.
Yeah.
That's when sex is the best, I think.
Yeah. Most of the people I've actually tried to date and, would consider relationships with were not fucking after.
Yeah. I don't even like to kiss on the first date. So I'm definitely not going to be having sex with someone.
But if I pick you up somewhere, and we fucking,
Well, yeah,
probably not trying to date you either.
That's a little different.
But when you dickmatize me,
yeah, I've been there before too. I'm like, damn it. Yeah, it's better when they're not good in bed, because then it's like, oh, whatever. But yeah, I've been dickmatized before. It's a dangerous, slippery slope.
you know, I wonder if that word's on Urban Dictionary.
I'm sure it has to be.
I wrote a poem about being dickmatized.
Do you have it memorized?
No,
Can you
it's
recite
not.
it?
Oh my God.
Put it in the show notes.
Oh my goodness. No, so last year I was dickmatized by two people.
At the same time?
No, not at the same time. Not this time.
Okay.
But it was crazy because, like, I don't know. Oh, I didn't save enough of it in here. I start a lot of things in my notes section on my phone, and this just says dickmatized. This is a story about a guy that got the dick that dickmatized.
It's beautiful. And you know, now I think about it, I don't even know the last time I got dickmatized. Like, yeah, I need to like go
Okay,
out
so
on the
let's talk
streets.
about this.
Okay.
When you think of being dickmatized, like, what does that mean to you?
The first thing that comes to mind, getting my back blown out, trying to crawl away. You know, when you're like trying to escape, they're like, come back. Like that to me, like that's getting dickmatized. Where I'm like, you know, I'm not saying like I'm sitting there and saying stop or don't do that, but it's more like, like, you know, or like your brain is scrambled, like you can't even think thoughts.
Yeah, for me, like being dickmatized, I notice like afterwards, I go into this subspace, and like with this one guy in particular, it took me like 24 hours or more to literally recover, like mentally, from like the space that he put me in. And for me, dickmatized is when you're just like literally hypnotized by the dick.
Yeah.
The dick is phenomenal. And you are blasted into another planet, and you are like, what the fuck is happening? Holy shit. And you're like, can't let them go. But you also like know that they probably are very not healthy for you, and you really need to let them go. But you're like dickmatized by the dick, and now you can't leave.
I also think dickmatized is like once you've like recovered, right? A few days later, when you like masturbate like 5 times in one day, like thinking about, you know, like your sex drive just like flies like off the charts. Yeah.
And it's also like this connection that is quite unreal. Like it's this level of sexual compatibility, I think, that you maybe don't experience with most other people.
Yeah, definitely. I got like fingermatized a couple of years ago. I still think about that. He like was fingering my G spot, and he was staying at an Airbnb, and we were on the couch, and like it wasn't awkward, but it was like a little awkward because I squirted everywhere. And then in like 30 seconds, like it usually takes a little bit longer than that. And he wasn't upset, but there was like a giant wet spot on the couch. And all I could think was, like, you're in an Airbnb. Like, I almost felt like panicky for him. Like, what are you going to do? Like, there's squirt all over the couch, you know? But that was really fun. But then he ghosted me the next day. So that was kind of like a womp womp.
You know what this just made me think of? You know the soda called Squirt?
Yes.
What the fuck were they thinking when they named that?
I don't know. Maybe they didn't know what squirt meant. Maybe they were sheltered.
Or maybe they did.
Maybe, does squirt taste like squirt? I don't think I've ever tasted it. The Amrita.
I just did a podcast about squirting. That's yeah. No,
squirting's fun.
Squirt, the beverage, to me is like Sprite, but worse.
Yeah,
but worse.
I
don't know. I don't drink pop or anything like that.
Yeah.
Not a pop soda girl. Whatever the fuck we call it these days.
Soda. We're on the East Coast right now. It's not pop.
But that's juicy. Can you like count the number of times that like you've had partners where you're just like, these are such memorable experiences, and then there's like a handful of other ones where you're like, yeah, I don't even remember that ever happening.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, much more in the memorable experiences, of course. There's definitely been like sex situations I've kind of blocked out because they just were like bad, or like weird, I guess.
What's your weirdest sexual experience?
Weirdest?
I want to hear this.
I'm like, I blocked it out. There's probably a few I can think of. I was really promiscuous when I was young. And so I was like 15 years old, like going to the goth clubs. And like when I was 17, I was going to like BDSM goth clubs, and people are on St. Anthony's crosses, and old guys are asking to lick my boots and stuff like that.
I love that they're old guys.
I mean, they like, to be fair, they really were old though. I wasn't like me being like 17 and saying a 30-year-old is old. No, these guys were like 65, 70 years old. So some of the strangest ones, I had a threesome when I was like 16 with my best friend at the time and this guy I was dating. And I feel like this is so gross to share. Oh my God. It was the first time I'd ever seen a yeast infection. Like she had like major issues down there. So that was like my first experience with a woman, my first threesome, and my first yeast infection experience. It was a little frightening. I feel like a little grossed out. That's why I blocked that out. That was, not so good.
You were young. You were wrong.
I was young. Yeah, I didn't know any better. Yeah.
And this is why like sex education in school is so helpful, because like I had a threesome at 16 too. God, my mom's going to die when she hears that.
I know.
Or two. And it's like people are having sex at that age. And we do so much to shelter children from the things. But the reality is if we gave them the tools and informed them, they're probably actually, well, studies literally show that they're less likely to engage in sexual behavior.
So
and
true.
We need to just give the people the information because they're fucking doing it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in school, I learned that most people have a sixth grade level education around sex. And, all this like abstinence only education is proven to be ineffective. It's like the DARE program. Like people are still going to be doing this stuff anyway. And it's important to talk about. Like growing up, my parents never talked about sex, never talked about masturbation. Like when I would ask questions, they wouldn't answer them. And so that's a big reason why I was promiscuous as a teen, because I was curious and I wanted to learn. And, my trusted adults in my life weren't willing to educate me. But to be fair, like they didn't get the education either, so I'm not blaming them. But I just think it's important for young people and adults alike to have more education, because knowledge is power, and it removes the shame and the stigma when we understand how our bodies work and, what desire and pleasure looks like for us.
I love that. So I would love to get into our kink of the week segment. At this podcast, every time I record, I like to talk about different kinks because we are able to increase awareness. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't necessarily know what you might be into until you hear that might actually be something to explore. So I would love for you to share your kink.
Oh my gosh. Are you all ready? Fisting, vaginal fisting, just so we're clear, not anal fisting, not anti-anal fisting, but that's personally not my thing. And I like to include the caveat because whenever I've shared my kink with my friends, they always say anal fisting. And I'm like, no.
What's crazy is literally I never even thought about anal fisting until you just said not that. I'm like, oh, that never even crossed my mind as something to do.
Yeah, I guess all my friends just go straight to the butt.
I wonder why.
No, I know.
So, okay, let's talk about vaginal fisting. What is that? How did you learn about this kink? And what do you enjoy about it?
Well, little story time. So I was like 19 years old. I was so in love with this guy who was like probably like early 30s, very scandalous. And somehow through conversation, he had told me that he was into fisting. I'm like, what is fisting? So he showed me what it was. And it was like the most intense, crazy out of body experience orgasm. Like the best way I can describe it is like an exorcist orgasm. But that I was 19, right? It was like a one-time thing. It was very kinky. Like we were in his workspace after hours. We went into the bathroom. He tied my hands behind my back, bent me over the vanity. So like the mirror was right there. Yeah, it was like, whoa. Yeah. Yeah. It was like totally like mind blowing. Because at that point, I was 19 years old. Like, I don't think I'd ever had an orgasm from sex. I think I was probably in my mid 20s when I had my first like penis vagina orgasm. I didn't really know much about my clitoris. I would like self pleasure, but yeah, this was like a whole other like galaxy that we were in. So that's kind of where it started. And then I had like 10 years of nothing. I would bring it up to partners and they often would be like, ew, that's weird, or like, is your vagina going to be loose if you do that? And like, just spoiler alert, like, no, like even women who have babies, their vaginas go back. The vagina's a rubber band, it snaps back. And of course, like Kegel exercises and stuff like that help too. But then a while later, I met this guy and he was like DOD, like Department of Homeland Security, like very like high up there and like, oh, so sexy. I don't know what happened to him, but he somehow, we got on the topic and he was like, yeah, I'm into fisting. So I'm like, let's go. So like we had a few sessions together. The craziest one was, and maybe somebody listening is like, oh shit, that was me. This is like back in my days when I was like way more free and like freaky. Like, not to say I'm not like that now, but I also am a homeowner now, so I don't have to like go out in the streets. He was in my car, fisting me in the car. So he was in the passenger seat, I was in the driver's seat, and this poor guy walks by walking his dog. It was late at night, just for the record. It wasn't like, 3 in the afternoon, but this guy walks by. And the gentleman like had his fist inside of me. And the poor guy, like he jumped up so high in the air. Like he looked completely mortified and he ran away. And I still think about that guy sometimes, like, oh my God, is he okay? Like, and I completely traumatized this guy. More recently, I did meet a guy, and the first time, like, we went on a few dates, and the first time we hooked up, he was like, I don't want to have sex because I don't want you to get pregnant, all of that. He's like, I'd rather give you a massage and like finger you. And I'm like, cool, like, that's great. So he's like fingering me, and then it's like 2 fingers, then it was 3 fingers, then it was 4 fingers. And I'm like, whoa, what is this guy doing? And then he like starts trying to put his fist in me. And I remember like screaming in like passion screaming, but like, what are you doing? Because I was so shocked, because my experience has always been me bringing it up. Most of the time, the guys being like, absolutely never, we're not going to do that. And then I meet this guy who's like willingly like trying to do it. Although we hadn't had a conversation about it. So like that was a little different. I do think in these type of situations, it is important to talk about and get consent, so both partners know what's going on. But yeah, we had some fun for a while until he ended up being a total fucking asshole. But that was some good sex. It was like spiritual. Like, I mean, fisting, I do think is like a little more sacred because, there has to be that connection with somebody and that trust, because, you're doing something so intimately, and also like a lot of lube and communication, like making sure that like everybody is feeling good. The last thing about fisting too, it's something you need to take your time for. Like, you're not just gonna just put your fist in someone's vagina. Like, you need to warm them up with clitoris orgasms, with massage, but definitely like the eye contact, the breathing, like really take the experience to a whole other level.
Yes.
So fun.
You made me think about the time this guy was eating me out while I was coming. He looked me in my eyes. I got dickmatized that day too.
Yeah. Eye contact is so sexy.
So sexy.
I have friends that are like, oh, we turn the lights off, like no lights at all. That usually is because they're self-conscious about their body.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm like, all the lights, put a spotlight on me. Like, I want to be able to see you.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's fun.
I love it. now I'm like, ooh, maybe I should try this. Just like, because again, you don't know what you don't know until you try it. I'm like, maybe I'd like it. I don't know. I did an orgasm episode recently, and one of the guests talked about the spiritual experience with fisting. And so I love that you kind of tied that in there, because you can go check out that episode to hear more about their experience with that. But it can be really intense from what I hear.
Yeah. I mean, very intense, but in a good way. But like I said, I mean, literally the orgasms are like The Exorcist. Like my neighbor probably has been like, what the fuck? Because like the amount of screaming that happens, but like pleasurable, of course. But yeah.
I love this. Now I'm curious.
Yeah, try it out. Let me know what you think.
Got me inspired here.
And, you know, for some people, I think you do have to really relax. I think that we naturally, as women, like want to tighten up when that's happening. So almost like bearing down a little bit helps you to like open up a little bit more. But also, you know, it's you almost kind of have to like train yourself for it. So it's sort of like if you want to run a marathon, you're not just going to go out and run 26 miles. Like you're going to go run sprints or like do a 5K. And so you can do that with fisting as well. You know, maybe you do like 2 fingers. Also like containment, so getting like clitoris stimulation while you have fingers inside the vagina can also be helpful to just relax you a little bit more, to accommodate more fingers.
Juicy.
But yeah, big fan.
I love that.
I love it. It's my favorite.
Well, I am so glad that we got to sit down and chat today in real life. And I like to wrap up all of my podcasts with this question. How do you define pleasure?
I define pleasure by how much I'm smiling when I'm doing something. So like if I'm eating something good, if I'm hanging out with people I love. Sexually, I define pleasure by the orgasm experience. How powerful that orgasm is. And I'm thinking of that just because we literally were just talking about fisting. Like, you know, that's super pleasurable to me. I think the last thing would be just feeling at ease in my body. So, you know, we all have different masks that we put on, right? So like when I'm doing my pure romance parties, like that's one version of me versus like one-on-one with you hanging out is a different one. But pleasure to me is like, can I just feel like my most comfortable, authentic self effortlessly? That gives me pleasure too. Just feeling embodied.
I love that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for making the time to record together and being here to share about all kinds of fun things here today. Where can the listeners find you at?
Sure. So I'm on selfmadediva.com. That's my website. Has all my social links, my catalog and website, as well as a link to my podcast. My podcast is called Sip with Summers. It's available anywhere you listen to podcasts. And then on Instagram and TikTok, I am at The Self-Made Diva.
Beautiful. We'll throw those links in the show notes. So thank you.
Thanks, friend.
This podcast is sponsored by Intimacy Coaching by Jordan Donnell. Have you ever desired more from your sex life or feel like you're having good sex but curious about how to make it even better? Are you desiring a deeper, intimate connection with yourself? Or maybe you are dealing with desire and arousal concerns or struggling with communicating your desires with your partner. If you're hearing this and thinking, that might be me, and you're curious to learn a bit more, let's chat. I would love to talk with you more to see if working with me is a good fit for you. To learn more about intimacy coaching with Jordan Donnell, go to coaching.jordandonnell.com. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for joining today and continuing to bring awareness to women's health. If you love the show, please subscribe so you never miss another episode, and leave a review for others to see. If you want to see me on the daily, you can check out my bio for links to all my pages. Be sure to share this episode with your girlfriends. Thanks again, and see you next episode.